students! My name is Andrea Beatriz Arango, and I'm the author of Iveliz Explains It All, a middle grade novel in verse about family, friendship, standing up for yourself, and learning to ask for help. Because my novel is written in verse, in today's craft video, we'll be talking all about poetry. When people think about poetry, they often imagine standalone poems that follow a specific rhyme scheme. But some writers, like me, like using poems to tell a longer book-length story. The story part is what we'll be focusing on today as we answer the question, how do writers use poetry to tell a story? But before we get started, let's quickly define a couple of things. 1. A poem is a type of short writing that uses imaginative words to show feelings. It is only a snapshot of a moment. 2. Poems usually have short lines made up of phrases or sentences that sound good together when they're read out loud. This doesn't mean they all have to rhyme though. And 3, a novel in verse is a book that is written using poems instead of the usual paragraphs and chapters you're probably used to seeing in books. In Iveliz Explains It All, I knew I wanted to start the book by showing readers a little bit of what Eve is struggling with. I wanted students to understand 3 things right away. 1, Iveliz has been getting in trouble at school. 2, big stuff has happened to her before we even meet her. And 3, she thinks everyone is against her and she hasn't done anything wrong. Because my book is in verse, I knew my first page would only be 1 poem. That's not a lot of words, so I decided to start with a snapshot of a moment that would hopefully show all 3 of the things I wanted readers to know about Iveliz. Ready? Second chances. Why is it that principals love giving second chances? Love reminding me they were kids too. Love acting like they're doing me a favor, doing my mom a favor, by sitting me down all serious and asking what they can do. Well, guess what? This is 7th grade now, and I don't need anybody's help but my own. I've moved on from everything that happened. I've made lists and I've made goals, and if I'm in the principal's office, you can 100% bet it wasn't my fault. Even though the poem Second Chances is short, it still does everything that the normal first page of a book would do. It introduces you to the main character, it lets you know what's going on with her right at that second, and it shows you how she's feeling. I also managed to include the 3 pieces of information I mentioned before. In other words, my poem is setting up the story of the book, just like a bunch of paragraphs would. Now let's focus on the poetry aspects here. I mentioned before that poetry doesn't always have to rhyme, but it should definitely flow and sound good when you read it out loud. Some ways a poet can do that is by repeating phrases or words, making some sentences longer, some shorter, and by using words that don't necessarily rhyme but do sound similar. Let's read that first poem again. Why is it that principals love giving second chances? Love reminding me they were kids too. Love acting like they're doing me a favor, doing my mom a favor, by sitting me down all serious and asking what they can do. Well, guess what? This is 7th grade now, and I don't need anybody's help but my own. I've moved on from everything that happened. I've made lists and I've made goals, and if I'm in the principal's office, you can 100% bet that it wasn't my fault. Can you find some examples of things that make this poem sound good? You're looking for words that rhyme, words that sound similar, repeated words, and short and long lines. Did you find some examples? There's a little bit of rhyme in this poem. For example, the line to rhymes with do. There are also words that don't rhyme but do sound similar, like own and goal. There's also a bunch of repetition in the beginning. Love giving, love reminding, love acting. And the second part of the poem is a perfect example of using sentences with different lengths. The first sentence, well, guess what, is only 1 line, but the next sentence is 2 lines and the next is 6. We've talked about a lot of different things here, but I hope you can see now that telling a story using poetry is a fun and different way to write, one that mixes all the cool stuff that makes a poem with all the information that you would usually share when writing a story. Writing a book in verse, you can't just write a paragraph and break it up into a bunch of lines. Even though you're telling a story, you're still writing a poem, and it should sound like a poem when you read it out loud. Recap, here are some things to pay attention to when you're writing a story using poetry. Am I creating a snapshot of a moment? Am I giving the reader all the information they need to know? And what strategies am I using to make my poem sound good? Now it's your turn, because the best way to learn to write poetry is by practicing it yourself. Think of a time you felt angry or frustrated, like Iveliz feels in that first poem. Or make up a reason for a character to feel frustrated or angry. Think about where the person in your poem is and what is happening. Think about how they feel and whether they are feeling angry or frustrated with themselves or with someone or something else. Now write a poem that shows that moment of frustration or anger. It can be real or made up. Make sure you are telling a story, even if your poem is short, and that you are making your poem sound good by using some of the suggestions we talked about before. Now hit pause here to brainstorm, or save this activity for later and check out the rest of the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival craft series on our YouTube page. We can't wait to see you at the festival. Happy writing!